One of the images that really comes to mind when I think about the power of constructivist listening, and I know this is probably going to hit a little close to home. I just want you to know we had this metaphor before we had the summer of apocalyptic fires. Um, reminds me a little bit about the fire management or forest management and fire policy in the United States. Until very recently, I mean, literally in the last like 2 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, the idea of fire was inherently described as threat, as something to always suppress. That was our our forest management policy. Some spark happens with the lightning fire. Everyone, all resources move in. You suppress the fire. Everything we know about fire now, it's certainly in the mainstream, but has been known for millennium by indigenous people, is that fires are not only natural, they are actually necessary for a healthy ecosystem to exist. We need the fire to burn out the invasive plants and also the kindling that, if allowed to stay, would create these conditions for super wildfires that we're seeing, mega fires that we're describing, and that many of us have lived through in this past summer. We know that the fires, when they happen, actually create, when the rains come, they pull the nutrients from the burned and charred earth into the soil. They strengthen the root systems, the interconnectedness, the exchange of nutrients, all of our natural systems, whether it's forest or wetlands, every prairies, we need fires. And it's a part of what it means to create a healthy ecosystem and biodiversity. And yet I often think of this metaphor as when you cannot hurt people without feelings. And let me say, oppression is violent, it's painful, it hurts us. And so when we have a policy in the United States, and again, I'm going to speak just from the United States perspective. I don't think it's only in the United States, but it's what I know. The policy has been anything related to feelings, we're going to suppress. You show too many of them, we are going to target you further, right? We'll label you, we'll isolate you, we may even drug you. All sorts of stigma gets attached to anyone who shows feelings. But how painful it is that we are now going to target human beings systematically, and then we're going to tell them all the feelings you're having about that, we're going to further target you for, right? And this is really a quote from my mentor's mentor, Erica Shover Marcusa, who we call Ricky. To blame or target people for acting out the results of their oppression is an act of oppression. And that's really what's happening when we continue to tell people, oh, you have feelings? Well, that's too bad. You should keep suppressing those. Oh, if you're going to keep having those, we're going to target you further. And for me, the practice of constructivist listening, which I'm hoping you will see as a path out of this, um, what I would call part of patriarchy and a part of white supremacist patterns, is reclaiming feelings, emotional healing, discharge as a human experience and as a radical disruption to the oppressive forces that would have us suppress these feelings. And so, a practice of how I would describe indigenous burning, as I understand it from my indigenous allies and in solidarity, is the very thing that will prevent the super wildfires. And we're in the middle of a super wildfire right now when it comes to racial injustice, right? We're seeing the devastating effects of having suppressed and suppressed the effects on our immune system as people of color. Diabetes is not just about not having access to healthy food. It's also about our cells literally in protection mode, blocking from absorbing nutrients that are healthy. It's the way that we metabolize everything that we eat. When we don't discharge, it's all of this. It's also the fact that we can continue to oppress and target people where we're numb and disconnected to our own feelings. Otherwise, we would stand up against this over and over and over again. So I really want you to hear, we're not blaming anyone for the system we're in. We are asking you to consider disrupting the patterns that have been assumed to be normal and even correct in how we address the effects of oppression on us as human beings.